How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How
Yeah.
about you?
Good. So, homegrown host homes. Do you want to kind of say what that's about for people that haven't heard it before?
Yeah, so Homegrown is a host home program that basically we're asking community members who have a spare bedroom or a space that can be turned into a private area to host a youth who is experiencing housing instability or homelessness for just a short period of time. It's a transitional housing intervention to support these youth. They're ages 18 to 24, so young adults. And it's really it's more of a community-based intervention, so you're not waiting around for more affordable housing to open up because there's definitely not enough of that here in the area. And the program serves all of Humboldt County.
Okay. How did the idea start?
Well, it's not a new idea. This is actually a proven intervention that's used all over the United States. Actually, Point Source Youth, they're a national organization that helps people start host home programs along with a few other interventions that are, cost effective and can help with preventative measures that are utilizing existing infrastructures. So,
Okay, so this is almost a national kind of program or nonprofit.
yeah. So, I am personally starting it here in Humboldt County as a local nonprofit. So we're still in the process of getting our 501c3, but the host home program idea and model is used nationally. So there are a lot of other
Okay.
programs across the country.
And so is this a more effective method for the transitional youth? Like this is the ideal
Yes.
way to kind of transition them from, I would assume it's from like foster care, right? Because 18, that's probably when they age out.
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of people who are homeless who have aged out of foster care. I believe in California, it's roughly 20%, like the day that they turn 18, that they become homeless because they don't have anywhere to go. Now, there are, of course, services for, um, foster youth up to age 21, but there's not enough for everyone. And so there are people who definitely need that support when they're transitioning to adulthood who just don't have it.
And so have you noticed for here locally, is it a lot of people that have just aged out of foster care, or is it predominantly people who have just been homeless from a young age?
Um, I would say, based on what I know of the population, there is a chunk of them who have aged out of foster care who
Hmm.
need supports, yes.
And so you guys, you kind of act as like that transitional group for them. I would assume that you're like, how are you? So after, because 18 to 24, right? So after they age out of your program, are you guys helping them to find a more permanent housing spot, or this is just like a temporary solution to get them a house?
Yeah, so the idea, they're not going to be in the program for years or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. The idea is, whether they need like 1 month or up to a year of support. While they're in our program, they're going to be working with a case manager, me typically, who would be helping them work towards independent living. So helping them find a job, working on resumes, all of those things. And then helping them to save, create a budgeting plan, and then helping them when they're ready and have the money and support. We would help them find housing that's in their price range, that's affordable, that they can sustain independent living on their own. But yeah, ideally, I would say a lot of the programs that are using host home models have 3 to 6 months in that time frame where
That's
youth
like the
are.
average they would be with you guys.
Yeah, I would say that's the average. Now, not to say that some people don't need a year, some people don't need a month. It really, the big piece of it is um, when youth have their basic needs met, so they have housing, stable, safe shelter, and they have access to food, then they can focus on those needs because it's really just not easy to, find and maintain a stable job if you don't have housing. Um, you may not have access to transportation, your sleep patterns are erratic, you're, worried about your safety. So you just, it'd be hard to maintain that when you're homeless.
Yeah, absolutely. I would imagine that just getting that room to breathe, which you guys kind of provide, like that would be, instrumental in kind of changing their direction, and getting off the street.
Yeah.
So you said 20% of youth, that's nationally, become homeless when they hit 18
No, so
or
that
out
that
of foster care.
yeah, so but that was a statistic specifically from California that
Okay.
I believe that's right. I looked that up like a month ago, so.
So how many children are you typically dealing with?
So the idea is just being a new nonprofit. The goal is to start with 10 youth. I know that's not a lot, but it's an improvement on how many people are being served. Now, if the program is successful and we're able to find enough hosts, absolutely want to expand and help more youth. But yes, the starting goal is, getting 10 youth placed.
So have you guys actually started yet, or you're still in like the planning phase of it all?
Yeah, so I have been working on recruiting hosts, and I know it's a big ask. So it's definitely a challenge, especially with all the complications of the pandemic. I've got most stuff set up and ready to go to start services. I actually am working on uh, the process of training our first host. So we do have one person so far who's planning on starting. So yeah, we are about to start implementing services, which is really exciting. Um, but yeah, we definitely need more community members to step up and help out because without hosts, this model doesn't work.
Yeah, it kind of falls apart.
Yeah, and so it's a great intervention, and I know it can seem kind of scary to people to bring someone into your home, but there's a lot of stuff in place to make it a safe and stable situation. And there's a whole process that goes through it. So, we're doing background checks on both the host and the youth. As far as youth coming in, we're, making sure that the hosts are safe, supportive people. We're checking references. We're doing a background check. And then we're doing a matching process. So we want to make sure to fit people together as best we can. It's not like foster care where someone just comes into the home and you don't know anything about them. You're trying to match people based on like lifestyle, values and expectations and those sorts of things. And then everyone's working together to create, house rules and expectations that both the host and the youth follow. So it's a collaborative process. And host and youth on both ends have an opportunity to say, no, I don't think this is going to be a good match. I'd like to try and match with someone else. And so there's, every step of the way, it's you get to have a say and who's going to be there. And you have time to get to know people. It's not like we're just throwing someone into your house. It's there's a few meetings that happen before everyone decides.
What's the desired relationship between the host and the child? Is it like almost like a mock parent and child, or is it like a tenant and landlord situation?
It's a really good question. It's definitely not a parenting situation. They are young adults, they need to make all their own decisions. The way I think of it is, I would say it's more like a roommate situation, except there are really great opportunities for mentoring and connection. So what I kind of like about this is you have a lot of the aspects of this is kind of like, when you're hosting an international student or programs like that, although they're younger, and so you do have more of a parenting role there. it's not like that. You have a lot of that mentoring aspects in there. And so I think of like also Big Brothers Big Sisters, except that's outside of the home. So you're kind of meshing those two. And you know, I'm not phrasing this right, but yeah, you have the roommate situation, but then you have that added component of like with Big Brothers Big Sisters where you do some mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean the idea behind it is it's really intriguing. I'm excited to see how it plays out, but it definitely seems like it's a big ask for the homeowner to,
it
to have
is.
this person come into your life and into your home, which is extremely personal.
It is, but it's also such a really cool experience. And how I've heard this from other host home programs is it's just like a messy, magical process. But hosts who have been a part of it is say it's a life changing experience for them, and in a good way. You know, you learn a lot, and it helps you grow as a person too. You're not just helping someone out.
Yeah. Are you in contact with a lot of the other host home programs, like feeding off of each other with ideas and such?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine you almost need that support to try to get it up and running.
Yeah, and there are just a lot of great resources out there. We're all kind of in collaboration with each other. I actually moved here from Minneapolis last September. I'm from here, but I spent the last 6 years in Minneapolis. And their host home program at Avenues for Youth, they're one of the kind of the top notch programs, and they do a lot of help with supporting new programs getting off the ground. And so they've been really great with helping me get things going.
So I would imagine that the biggest limiting factor would probably be getting the hosts, right?
Yes.
How many do you have 10 hosts lined up right now?
No, I've
Uh,
won.
oh wow. So that's a bit of a challenge.
It is. I've had some people express interest, but I would say the big factor has been, a lot of people are working from home, and so that second bedroom has turned into an office, and so things are extra crowded for people right now. And so I'm hoping also as this transition of more people getting vaccinated or transitioning back into workplaces, that might open up some more interest into possibly hosting. But especially like, people who were previous foster parents. Those are the types of people who I think have expressed interest because there's a huge need.
What are the biggest concerns of the host parents? Because when I think about it, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is safety, both for the hosting party and for the youth that's coming into the house. I know you said you do background checks and stuff, but still
Yep.
sometimes people just don't click.
Yeah, and so again, staff are with them throughout that whole process, and so we're navigating all of those situations with the host and the youth. And so if things come up, and they will come up, we'll work with them to work things out or say, hey, if we need to move someone, we need to move someone.
Hmm.
But that's not what we want to have happen. Um, yeah, so I totally feel like I lost my train of thought and I forgot
It was
the
just like that
question.
the safety aspect of it all, where you're
Yeah,
bringing
yeah,
in
yeah.
this other person and you have these two parties who really don't know each other.
Yeah, so I think you were asking about what issues come up out of that, right?
Yeah, for the hosts as
Yeah.
well as for the youth coming in.
So, a big thing I would say are expectations, like that, and that's why we have people sit down and like really figure that out. This is like, what chores are we gonna do? What's expected of me? Like, can I have visitors? So visitors is the thing that I've heard comes up. Um, food, because everyone has different types of food that they like, and if the hosts are, say, so like I'm vegetarian and the youth is a meat eater. If I was hosting a youth, you would still want to provide food that the youth would want to eat and have that in the home so that they feel like their needs are being met because maybe they don't like vegetarian food. So
So
that
the
can be a big
host
issue.
the host is providing. food as well.
Yes,
Okay.
and so that can look differently for everyone, you know, like if you're, so there is, I should say, there is this option for a financial stipend for people who, you know, really can't afford to take on the additional cost of living. It basically covers utilities and food for the youth and like toiletries.
Okay.
And so, that would cover that. And there are options too, you know, if you're able to provide dinner for a youth, awesome. You know, youth can typically access EBT card, food stamps, so they can get their own snacks and breakfast and lunch and figure that stuff out for themselves. You know, they're resourceful. But yeah, providing dinners at the bare minimum, I would say, is
Would be at the top
important.
of the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially where they're just, I mean, you're assuming that they don't have a job if they're homeless, so that being
Yeah.
able to provide that support. Okay. So they can get a stipend for that. That's interesting. And I guess, I mean, it just seems hard in that, you're really just trying to lean on the community. You almost need the community to come out and be like, yeah, this is something that we need to help provide, I guess, in a sense.
Yes, but when you're thinking of that too, you know, every young adult needs the support of the community. Like typically, you know, a successful young adult has the support of their friends, their family. Like they have access to resources in order to, you know, be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the people who are experiencing housing instability are typically people who don't have enough supports. They don't have someone that they can turn to um, who can give them access to these resources. And so I do believe it is important for community members to step up and support other community members, you know, and have that, you know, kind of us and us mentality versus us and them mentality that some people have. Like a lot of people, I think, also just don't realize that people experiencing homelessness are just like us. They're you know, they're just having some. They're down on their luck, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and just need a little extra support.
Are there is there certain criteria that the youth would have to meet, like no drug use or no alcohol use, to be included in the program, or how does
Absolutely
that play out?
not.
Okay.
So we are a harm reduction, housing first model. We use trauma informed care as well. So that means, you know, we don't require sobriety for people to enter the program. Now, I fully understand that, you know, hosts aren't necessarily going to want drug and alcohol use in their home, and that's fine. You know, if they want to use elsewhere, they can use elsewhere. Also, not every youth who's experiencing homelessness is using anyway. Um, but it should never be, I think, something that limits housing. You know, housing's a human right. And I think when you require sobriety in order to get housing, it's really difficult because you really need housing and stability before you can work on other things that you need to work on in
Mm-hmm.
order to be successful in life.
I could definitely see that being a limiting factor, though, on the host side. Because I mean,
Yep.
if I was thinking about it and I was going to host a child and they're, using whatever drugs, especially harder drugs, I could see that, you know, playing into it.
I do want to specify though that this type of program is it's an early intervention. So if you're catching people who are at the beginning of homelessness, you're typically getting people who aren't like really having strong drug use. You're catching, you know, maybe they'll use marijuana or
Mm-hmm.
something recreationally, but it's not necessarily going to be the people who are constantly in homelessness because of their drug use. So they can't hold down a job because of that. They can't, you know, keep their housing due to issues related to that. That's more, there are other housing programs that work with people who need more long-term support, and I would say that those people typically fit into that category
Mm-hmm.
versus the quick, short-term transitional housing
This is almost
category.
like the fork in the road for them, where it's
Yes.
like you're trying to catch them early enough where you can prevent a lot of that.
Yes.
Okay. Why 18 to 24?
Yeah, and so 18 to 24-year-olds, the biggest thing is if you're catching it early, if you're helping them before they've experienced long-term homelessness, before they've had a lot of trauma or high drug use or all of the things that come with homelessness, when you've been homeless for a long time, you can experience PTSD or lots of things that just come with living on the streets and being more in survival mode. You're catching it early, then when they are stable, they're more likely to stay in stable housing. And so that's, it's preventing from having to do more homeless services later down the road, like with adults who, I would say a lot of people who get adult services, they've at least been homeless for a year because there are not enough places to provide services that they're helping the people who are in most need. And so it can be harder to exit that cycle at that point once you've experienced long-term homelessness.
Yeah, which makes sense. It continues. You almost get sucked deeper into it.
Yeah.
What is the I mean, homelessness is such a crazy problem, and it just seems like it's spinning out of control almost. Is it just a lack of resources that are devoted to almost like this preventative approach where you catch these kids early enough to kind of change their path? Or I mean, why is this why is this an issue that is big enough that it needs a program like this, where it's not just one or two kids, but it's 20% of foster youth, or it's X amount of whatever?
I'm sorry, can you kind of say
Yeah,
that a little differently?
I can bring the scope in. Um, why? I mean, why is homelessness this uncontrollable problem? Why are we? Why is it that when you drive down Old Town, you see a ton of them? Just this homeless problem. I mean, why is it? I know it's not just drug use, and I know it's not just mental health, even though those are big contributors.
They are.
Um, why why is this problem not addressed more? I guess at a national level, at a state level, because it seems like people are doing things, but it doesn't seem like it's making any progress. It seems like the problem is growing.
So, to answer your
I know
question,
the scope of that is very large. I don't mean to put you on the spot
it
with
is
that.
huge, and it's
Yeah.
also very, I feel like it's different in Humboldt versus other places because a big, huge factor of homelessness in most places, not Humboldt County specifically, because we have a high white population, you see a lot of people who are homeless are disproportionately people of color, indigenous people. Um, and I know that's not the majority here, but in general, that's the reason. And so you have a lot of systemic racism issues that are underlying poverty and homelessness factors that contribute to people staying homeless. And so that's, nationally, that's a bigger issue. And
When you say systemic issues, do you have any like go-to points? Like what leads you towards that?
yeah, I mean,
Because that's just such a blanket. You hear that term thrown around all the time. I just was wondering if you have something a little more concrete
and,
behind that.
and this is where I'm, not great with coming up with the
Hmm.
stats on the spot, but what I think of is, you have stuff like redlining, things where it's harder for people of color to get home loans or get housing in, nicer neighborhoods, or just the fact that they end up in jail more due to like minor things and this, where they live. Like I'm trying to just like incarceration rates, when you're coming out of jail, um it's hard to get housing, it's hard to get a job, and so that plays into it. So
Hmm.
there's stuff like that. um
Are a lot, I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but out of the homeless population that are adults, have a lot of them been homeless since they were, say, 18? Or is it kind of hit or miss? Like some people are homeless in their youth and manage to come out of it, or is it? it's usually a lifelong sentence if they don't get that help.
I think it just depends on the person. There's so many different factors. If you're say a homeless youth who's experienced housing instability your whole life, maybe you got kicked out when you were 18 because you were in foster care, and you just never got that support when you were young, you might continue to be homeless throughout your life. There are people who, just lose their jobs, like the pandemic cost a lot of people their
Oh,
jobs.
absolutely.
And so you could just be down on your luck and it could be hard to get out. Some people can get on their feet quickly and some people need more support. And I would say a lot of the people who do experience long-term homelessness, there's some mental health issues that need to be addressed, and that can be really hard to get out of homelessness when you have that.
Yeah, mental health is definitely it's a big factor in I think a lot of this.
Yeah.
What is I don't want to say success rate, but what is the success rate for programs like this? Like when you were in Minneapolis, like how many transitional youth do you guys place into housing afterwards and they don't revert back to homelessness?
So I didn't work for them, so I
Oh,
couldn't give you like their specific rates, but I do know that most of the youth who are coming through these types of programs, who are receiving supports from host home programs, are typically successful. There are follow ups after. I think like after a year, you check in and see, are they still living independently? Are they holding down a job? And I would say typically, yes, that is the case from the information I've been given.
mm-hmm. It seems like affordable housing is another big barrier in all this. Like,
Oh, it's a huge
yeah,
problem.
rent is so, I mean, even here, rent is just ridiculous. And if you go,
Affordable housing is not affordable either. Like
mm-mm,
you look at the minimum wage here and you look at the cost of rent,
yeah,
it doesn't equal it doesn't add up.
yeah, minimum wage is definitely not the ideal. And it's not really a
No.
living wage anymore, like what you would hope to see. So it's crazy that all these barriers are set up. And, I mean, if you're in foster care, which is a whole nother ballgame to try to come out of that and just be able to provide for yourself and continue to push through, it seems like a very significant challenge that is daunting.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of overcoming that. That's why I was very interested in your guys' program just to see how that all would play out and help them. When do you guys plan on starting
It's just as we get
as you go?
hosts.
Mm-hmm.
So like stuff's set up, it's ready to go. I mean, I am still working on some host home trainings and improving doing that here locally, but for now I do have training from other programs that I can utilize. So that's the only other thing I'm really needing to do, but otherwise it's recruitment, and then I have referrals that I can get from other organizations for youth who are in need, and so as I get hosts, I'll get those referrals and we can start matching.
Now, is it just you working at this right now, or do you have a team with you?
I wish I had a team. It is me because, I told you we're still working on our
Mm-hmm.
501c3. And so when we get that, then we can apply for funding. Um, so right now I'm doing this on my own. I'm not getting paid, I'm a volunteer. So, yeah.
Are you working as well as doing this? Is this like a...
No, this is my full time
Oh,
job.
wow. Okay. How do you support yourself?
My husband has a good paying job.
Okay.
Luckily for me, I'm able to work on something I'm really passionate about, and this is something I've always wanted to do: is start up my own nonprofit and just make a difference where I can. So
And that 501c3, I'll be honest, I don't really know what that is, but I'm assuming that's the labeling for a nonprofit that kind of
yes,
allows you to receive federal and state grants and stuff and such.
yes,
Okay.
that is what that is.
Is there a lot of funding allocated to this at the state level?
It just depends. I would say there's more than enough funding for the cost of what it would be to run this program
Mm-hmm.
here. I should be able to get funding once I have that. But waiting for 501c3 status, it can take a while. So once I get the form turned in, which I will have it turned in this week actually, it'll be about 5-month wait before funding. Now, not to scare anyone off who wants to be a host, I am good to go on the host stipends. I've got stuff figured out for that. But just as far as like paying staff or things like that goes, is what I mean.
Where would that money come from? From you?
What?
The stipend money? You said you had that taken
Oh,
care of.
there's support from other
Oh, okay.
organizations and being able to kind of cover rent.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would consider that as kind of like a rent support. So
And with this, I guess, can you sponsor more than one child at once? Or would it really be a one-to-one kind of focus?
no, I mean, you could host more than one youth. Like if you have a couple bedrooms,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, that's a possibility. I would recommend just
Starting with
starting with
one.
one,
Yeah.
and then if you want to use your other bedroom for a second, that's great. And host. You're committing to hosting one person, but if you like it, and say person's gone in 3 months and you want to host someone else, awesome, you can keep it going. So
What goes into the training program for the hosts?
yeah, so there's a lot of different stuff. You're learning about being trauma informed. You're learning about setting boundaries and expectations. You're learning. Oh God, there's so many things, and my head is being very
No, it's okay.
forgetful.
So it's almost just like how to safely and interact in a healthy way with
Yeah,
who's with you almost and
yeah,
be that mentor and take care of them but maintain space and maintain that relationship in a way, I would imagine.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That sounds right.
Yeah. Close enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um wow, that's interesting. I'm always fascinated by mentorship programs because I think that is something that is extremely invaluable for people of all ages. I think you could always gain
Oh yeah.
valuable information from having someone who's a little more experienced than you. And
And you learn as the mentor
yeah,
too.
absolutely.
I've been mentoring a girl from Big Brothers Big Sisters for the last it's been almost 5 years now. Although it's unofficial now that I've moved back to California, but I've learned so much from her too. It's incredible.
What made you want to get involved in this? Because I mean, it seems like it is definitely a noble pursuit, I would say, but it's draining, I would imagine, just having to deal with the weight of it all, the gravity of it.
Yeah, so I guess what initially got me into it is a few years ago, my husband and we actually tried to adopt two teens who were about to age out of foster care. They were 16 and 17 sisters. And we ended up not making it all the way through the matching process with them. They wanted someone who would be able to meet their cultural needs. Native American families were definitely preferred. And I understood that. Very heartbroken nonetheless. But then I started thinking, well, what if they don't get adopted? If they age out of foster care, what's going to happen to them? What supports are they going to have? And so I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and so I found a statistic of the 20,000 plus foster youth age out each year and end up homeless. And I was like, that is just mind boggling. That's a lot. And so I kind of, that, and I would say, I mean, I had some of my own experiences when I was a young kid. When my parents got divorced, my dad had experienced homelessness and kind of doubled up and couch surfed at friends and family's places, and I slept on the floor there, and there were nights where, if his friends weren't home, sleep in the car, That's what it was. And so just, those experiences combined, I'm kind of I think this is what I want to do. So I got a job working as a case manager for the Link in Minnesota in a Housing First program. And it was really awesome to be able to support people. Like I had a youth on my caseload who I got to see him get a job, a full-time job, making like $40,000 a year, being able to support himself. Like it's the coolest thing.
Yeah, that's got to be a great feeling.
Oh, it feels so good. It's like you feel so much pride. Like you feel so proud of them. And just seeing that is it's amazing.
I had no idea that there were cultural almost prerequisites, I guess, to adopting people. I mean, it kind of I mean, it makes sense, I guess, but that seems kind of outrageous in a way.
I wouldn't say it's like a prerequisite. They prefer,
Mm-hmm.
they have preferences. Like, I fully get that though, because Native Americans have very different needs and their culture is very different. And so you want to really be able to provide and support for them. I've learned so much since then on that, and not to say I do an amazing job. I try my best, but you definitely want people who are going to understand culture. Like if you are also a white person and you adopt a black kid, you need to learn how to care for their hair and their skin. You have to make sure because it's different. So it's just making sure that you're knowledgeable about the situation.
Yeah, but it seems like first and foremost it would be, is this a loving family? Because how many kids
Well,
go
yes.
unadopted each year? It seems like if this is a loving family and this child is going to be taken care of and not abused and not mistreated, that would be above all.
But
Above
you're
all.
but you're also thinking about different things, like the girls that we were trying to adopt were already in a good foster home
Mm.
that was an ICWA family, so they knew that their cultural needs were already being met, and so you have to weigh stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that goes into it, a lot more
Yeah, it
than
seems
people
like that.
realize. But yes, I mean, you definitely want to put them in a good home.
Mm-hmm. I think that kind of just caught me off guard because what are cultural needs? Like I'm Latino,
Uh
but
huh.
if I was talking to someone who is more culturally aware of their Hispanic roots, I would be lost. I would be like, I I'm American, I'm Mexican, but
Yeah.
culturally I'm not well versed where I would, if someone were trying to adopt me, God forbid, like if I lost my parents and back when I was, a child, that would, I don't think that would have been a barrier for me just because,
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily raised in that way. Like I have cultural, I guess,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily tied to what it would have been if I was born in Mexico. You know what I mean?
It's different for everyone, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that more of a focus obviously with people of color and minorities then I would suppose, right? Because
Mhm. Yeah.
mm-hmm. That seems so crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Did those girls ever get adopted? Do you know?
Um I don't officially know, but when they're off of the website, the Minnesota Waiting Kids list page, you assume that they're adopted.
Mm-hmm. You
So
hope.
they were taken off of it, so I'm hopeful
Mm-hmm.
that they did get a good family to live with and support them. So
Yeah, I mean the foster care and that whole system is just it needs some help. I think
yeah,
it needs some overhaul because so many kids, you go into that system and you don't ever come out and it changes you forever. Understandably so because that's not what you want for these kids. You want
yeah,
them to have a stable and loving home and reach their full potential, whatever that is for them. Whatever path they choose, you want them to be able to strive for that. And you hear these stories of kids, especially going into foster care, but just these kids enduring these painful times in their youth and that shapes them for the rest of their lives. I'm reading this book right now.
mhm,
It's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And he was a Navy SEAL. He's an ultra marathon runner, and when he was a child, not to spoil the book, this is just a small part, but or an important part, but when he was a child, he was abused by his father. He worked at his family's roller rink, so he never really got to sleep or focus on school. He would sleep during class at school
Yeah.
from when he was like 6 and 7 because he'd be up all night working the roller rink with his family. And his dad was abusive um, towards him and his brother and also his mother. And just you hear about what he went through and the psychological trauma that has on anybody, but let alone a child in your formative years like that. And then in his case, to hear how he overcame that and use that to fuel these other desires and become someone who wasn't defined by what happened to him was incredible. But that's not the standard, right?
No, it's not.
That's not usually what happens to these kids. They undergo this trauma and that's what defines them. And it's understandable because that is so significant. Most people wouldn't be able to handle abuse like that as adults, let alone as
Yeah.
when you're 6 and 7. Like your parents are your heroes. They're supposed to guide you and help you become who you are and kind of mentor you as your parents, you know? And it's just that people don't like to think about that, especially with like homeless youth
Mm-hmm.
and foster care. People like to sweep these ideas kind of under the rug because they're not nice. They're not good to look at, you know?
Yeah.
But it's so sad and it's such a daunting problem and I don't know how you begin to fix that, I guess. I mean, I think programs like this are definitely a huge step in the right direction. Um, but it doesn't seem like it's almost enough, you know what I mean?
You're right. Yeah. Um, all you can do is try and help out where you can and in whatever way you can. And even if it's just, like donating to an org or helping to be a respite person for a foster parent or um, whatever you can do to help people, I think it's important.
Mm-hmm. How are you identifying potential hosts? Not to just swoop back onto the subject, but how does that play out? Are you just reaching out to whoever you can get a hold of, or?
Oh, I've been trying lots of different things, and I still have lots of different things I need to try.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done a lot of online recruitment first.
Through like social media or?
Yeah, and like through people I know, and then asking them to reach out to people they know, and yeah, like community groups through Facebook has been a good way to reach out to people. I did an interview with K Mud at one point as well. So just getting the word out where I can, yeah. But word of mouth is definitely the best way. So
Mm-hmm.
even if like 1 to 2 people, is like, hey, you got a spare bedroom, and I think you'd make a great host. Just send them my way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully people will hear this, and if it sparks something inside of them, they will reach out to you and make something happen there.
Yeah, and it's no commitment to call and get more information either. If someone's interested, we can talk through any concerns, see if it's the right fit. Again, you have an opportunity to say, no, I don't think this is the right fit once you're through the training, and that's okay.
There's no commitment. You can try it out, see if it works.
Yeah. Although, I would say once you have a youth placed in your
Yes, then
home,
it's a little bit more of a
then
commitment
you have a
because you don't want
commitment.
to you don't want to be moving these kids around any more
No,
than
I don't.
necessary.
Yeah, I don't want to. If possible, I would
Mm-hmm.
like to avoid that. So,
All right, well, Joanne, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. I feel like, I mean, it's a hard conversation, but I'm excited to see where you take this and what it can become for Humboldt, and hopefully it'll change the course of some children's lives in some power or young adults' lives in
yeah.
some powerful ways.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And then, so if anyone listening is interested in hosting or just finding out more, our website is www.homegrownhosthomes.org. You can also call me at 707-502-2228 for more information, or you can email me at info@homegrownhosthomes.org.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Joann. I had a great time talking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.